Hello everyone, welcome back to CDL predictions for week 2. We are now on the road to Major 2. Last week we had week 1 predictions. The card to that video will be up here in the corner, but if you want a little TLDR on how we did on last week's predictions, I will pop up a screenshot from my notes app right here on screen right now, along with my score line for last week. There are 3 matches specifically that I want to talk about that did not go my way, as you can probably tell. Specifically, I want to start off with Miami versus FaZe. I'm proven right again because I always have been. I've been saying since this season started, Miami, they are someone that is very, very underestimated. That team can beat any team at any given day, and clearly they proved that because they 3-0 FaZe just out of nowhere. I was fucking shocked. My friends were shocked. Twitter was like, "Holy shit, is Miami back?" Clearly, you know, they had the potential to beat these top teams, but they just, I don't know, some days they'll show out, some days they won't. So that was one of the series that like really stood out to me this whole weekend. OpTic and Toronto, they just easy 3-0s for them. And then the second matchup I wanted to talk about, which was the most fun I had all of Saturday, was OpTic versus G2. OpTic goes down 0-2 and just hits a clean reverse sweep, no pressure, wins the overload, carries that into the hard point, and then just smokes in the search. Phenomenal plays out of OpTic. Personally, as an OpTic fan, I was very happy to see that because it was getting a little scary. I thought it was going to be a G2 3-0, and now I would have had to talk about it. But clearly, I don't have to. I get to talk about the best part of it. And then, obviously, like I was saying, Miami, they showed out the 3-0 phase, hit 3-1. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the one series that people can clown me about. Go ahead in the comments. Let me know how much of an idiot I am. I said that C9 was going to take G2 to map 5. They got absolutely smoked. Now, I will say their respawn wasn't that bad. C9 had a good hard point. It was just a few P2s, money hills that G2 had. And then their overload, they started good in the beginning, and then it just went downhill from there. Their search is absolutely abysmal, though. So C9, unfortunately, they did not get off to a good start. And I think there's already rumors that C9 is trying to look for people to replace some of the players on the roster. I'm not really sure who at the moment, but again, that camp is just in shambles. I don't know what else they can do unless they want to put more money into their budget and buy out some of these players. Maybe bring Kenny in, bring in some of the challenger players that have experience in the pro league, but I don't know. That camp is just in shambles right now. But nevertheless, this is actually my second time recording this video. So I actually have all of my pick'ems up until I believe it is the second Toronto series already picked out, but we'll go over them again. We'll give our same analysis. FaZe versus Surge. I think that FaZe, since they were able to bounce back from the Miami 3-0 last week, I'm not really worried about them losing to Surge here. I think that Surge, again, they can take a map off, but I just don't see them being able to beat FaZe for 3. I think this will be a FaZe 3-0. Hopefully it's a good series and it's not just a DoorDash 3-0. I'm hoping for a 3-1 with some nitty-gritty respawns, but we'll see. I'm just FaZe, they're dominant. They know how to play the map. Surge, I feel like they're still trying to get their feet, get their feet planted and get, a game plan going, especially with some team chem. So I'm thinking this is going to be a FaZe 3-0. And then the second series of the day will be Falcons versus Cloud9. This will probably be either the most entertaining series in terms of shit talk or the most boring series in terms of stat lines. I tried to give Cloud9 benefit of the doubt last week. They proved me wrong in terms of just being absolutely just not as good as I thought they were going to be. And then Falcons, I said last week, I'm tired of saying that the Falcons are shit. However, every time I root for them, they lose. But every time I say that they're going to lose, they win. So if I had to pick the lesser of two evils, I'm going to say that Falcons win against Cloud9, but I'm hoping for a map 5. Just because all 4 players on Cloud9 have a reason to shit talk, and Encourage is like the biggest shit talker I've ever seen. Also, shout out Nezra on Cloud9. That kid is gross. He needs to get picked up on another team, either halfway through this year before champs, for EWC, or for next season on just a better team, maybe like a top 6 team, because that kid is fucking gross. But I think this is going to be a Falcons win, though I really hope it goes map 5 because I want to see the shit talk so bad, dude. And then we have Toronto versus LAT. I said that I had already recorded part of this. It's because I didn't realize who was coming in terms of Reeal, because Reeal got benched. I was actually saying the wrong name of the player that was coming in to take his spot. It's Kips. Kips is coming in place for Reeal. And this is going to be very interesting because we saw what Nium did to LA last week in terms of him getting plugged in for Kenny. He was a phenomenal arrow on the map. He can shoot his gun. He knows how to play the game. He knows how to work around the superstar roster that's around him with a BZ, Hydra, and Scrap. Kips may be able to be a multiplier for the Toronto roster. Joe Deceives needs help. He fucking needs help on the map. So I don't know if it's enough considering Insight. He continues to underperform. I don't know what we can do. Apparently, it's rumored that Kenny could come in place of Insight. That could be an upgrade, but, you know, like we saw, Kenny isn't really the, you know, playing at his best. That's why he got benched on LAT. So it's really a mixed bag for this Toronto roster. I think with Kips, I think they have a better chance of taking a map off LA. But I think LAT are going to take this 3-0, maybe at worst for them 3-1. But just these guys are firing on all cylinders. I think it's going to be a 3-0 LAT win. And then moving on to Saturday, we have Toronto versus G2. I think this will be a G2 victory just because I don't think one day of playing is going to be enough to iron out all of the mistakes that they're going to make in that LAT series. But I do think that this will be a definite 3-1. I still think G2 wins this. But I do see Toronto getting a little bit better each day that they play with Kips. Hopefully they decide to stay with him and don't just drop him after a weekend and then bring Reeal back in. I know that's what Reeal is hoping for, and if I was him, I would be hoping the same thing. But I think this is going to be a G2 3-1. I don't really see Toronto instantly upgrading. I think it's going to be a slow burn until they become, you know, a team that is like Miami, where they can beat any team on any given day. But they have to lock in. Next match will be LAT versus Boston. I don't really need to harp on this too much. Boston, they proved me wrong last week. However, they're wrong against LAT. They proved me wrong, but they're not going to prove me wrong this time. I think LAT beats Boston here. I will say Boston's looking a lot better than they did last major, or last split, sorry. I'm going to stop doubting them as much as I have been. But I think LAT, they are the team to beat right now. Them and Gentlemates are like the two teams that are like on top of the CDL right now. Hopefully OpTic can, you know, dislodge one of them and, you know, take back their spots, because they are the reigning back-to-back world champions. They won EWC, they won champs, and then they won champs the year previously, obviously with a different roster. But they are the reigning champions of the CDL season. Hopefully they can dislodge either LAT or Gentlemates. But right now, LA, they are looking phenomenal. I think it's going to be a LAT victory 3-0 against Boston. And then speaking of the big two, we have Gentlemates versus Carolina. Carolina is looking better. I'm very glad to see this camp improving, especially after the Slasher retirement. No hate to Slasher, but clearly the way that he wanted to play Call of Duty was not what this camp needed to really succeed in this current CDL environment. However, like Boston, I don't think Carolina can beat one of the big two, and Gentlemates are the current, you know, they won Major 1. So they're the team to beat along with the LAT. I think this will be a Gentlemates 3-0, but I really want to see Carolina fight back. I want really close nitty-gritty respawn maps. Those are my favorite maps to watch in the CDL, but we'll just have to wait and see. I'm thinking this will be a Gentlemates 3-0. And this is a series that I've been dreading talking about because, like I said, Miami is the team that can beat any team at any point in time. Not to mention, they are the fucking kryptonite to OpTic. They have always been OpTic's kryptonite. I don't know why. This team can beat OpTic whenever they want. Whenever they want. Ever since fucking they were Florida Mutineers. We talked about it last week. But I think OpTic, I think that they've watched enough VOD on this specific Miami roster that they're not going to get absolutely swept. I'm going to say this goes map 5. And I'm going to go with my heart and say that OpTic win this, just because I don't expect OpTic to take another loss for a minute, just because of how seriously they took the loss at Major 1. I think this will be a 3-2 OpTic victory, but I'm very, very terrified because holy shit, Miami. I mean, they 3-0'd FaZe last week. They 3-0'd FaZe. So who's to say they won't 3-0 OpTic this time around? I don't know. Much to think about. Much to think about. And moving on to Sunday, we have our first match of the day, Falcons versus Carolina. I'm going to take Carolina on this one just because they have given me a little bit more consistency than Falcons has. Like I said, every time I root for Falcons, They always, let me down. And every time I bet against them, they always, prove me wrong, and they fucking make me look like an idiot. However, that Carolina camp, like I said previously, they are looking more and more consistent. I'm very excited to see how this roster turns out by the end of the year. I think Carolina beat this. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes map 5, but I think that Carolina will probably put them away 3-1. If I really had to gun to my head, I think Carolina wins this 3-1. Next matchup, this is Boston versus Surge. This is another sleeper series for me. I'm not really gonna be too tapped into this. I just think that Surge roster, they need to figure out something to really, kind of set them apart from the pack, because right now they're just one of the punching bags of the league. They're like the bottom 4. I'm not really excited to see Surge play against any team really. I think Boston probably beat them 3-0. Like I said, I'm going to stop doubting Boston because of how they were playing last split compared to this split. They're playing a lot better. I think they've kind of pushed themselves up into the top 6 for me. And I think that by the end of this year, if this roster, sticks with it, they dial in, they will be a very fun team to watch by the time the Champs rolls around and EWC rolls around. But with that being said, I think Boston beats Surge 3-0. I'm not really too excited for this series, but we have to get through the more boring ones to get to the more exciting ones, you know what I mean? Next up, we have OpTic versus Cloud9. This is Atomic Bomb versus Coughing Baby. There's not really much for me to add on with the previous commentary that we've had through this whole video. I think OpTic win this 3-0. So I really would like to see this Cloud9 roster get some wins under their belt, but I think their schedule is just severely front-loaded. Even if you have them go up against the bottom 4 teams, these are still challengers players, so they still need to get their feet wet. I think OpTic win this 3-0. Man, I feel sorry for that roster in that camp because that schedule is fucking brutal, man. Holy shit. And then to end Sunday, we have G2 versus FaZe. I am very excited to see this matchup just because of how G2 played last major. I think FaZe knocked G2 out, if I'm not mistaken. So this is kind of like a grudge match. They're both 1-1 right now. Well, 1-1 as of time of recording. This is before all the matches start. But I'm very excited to see how G2 plays against a FaZe roster now that they've had time to look back at the VOD from Major 1. Hopefully be able to iron out some of those mistakes and scrims. I will pray this goes to map 5. I'm thinking FaZe wins this just because, like I was saying, FaZe has consistency. Not only that, they almost beat Genomates, which is the team that won Major 1. So I'm not counting FaZe out, but I'm also not discounting G2's ability to stick with it. They almost 3-0'd OpTic as well. So I think this goes map 5. I think FaZe eke it out, but it's going to be a really, really, really rough search series for them. Just seeing their search from, last week and Major 1, they really need to improve on it. I don't know what they need to do to really, tighten up, but those searches are going to end up losing them championships. Search and destroys win championships for every Call of Duty team in existence. The best Call of Duty teams that you've seen that have won rings before have been phenomenal search and destroy teams. So FaZe really need to dial that in if they want to try and bounce back and win a ring this year. And that will do it for week 2 pick'ems. I'm very confident that I probably won't get a clean sweep on this. There's no guarantee for a clean sweep anymore, but given my ratio from last week, especially just watching the major, not being tapped into all the matches before that, I'm very confident in my picks. But what are your picks? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know what teams you're rooting for. Please buy the C9 pack. Please get those boys a higher salary over there. Okiz only has one working earphone. The other one has a sponge on it. Okay, go back and watch the VOD if you don't know what I'm talking about. But for those of you who know, you know. Encourage need cheats on his bed. Buy the C9 pack. Please help those boys out. But other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend. We will be back next week for week 3 predictions. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later.